Hello everyone, welcome back to Dominions 5 with Kirby 1, and today we're going to do something that I rarely do, which is a nation showcase video. The reason I rarely do it is quite simple. I did a very long time ago a nation showcase of middle-aged man, in which I told the whole YouTube world that I thought it was a great idea to take the Berserk Bless. Go watch that if you want to have a good time. The reason that I'm actually doing it is multifold. First off, about a week or so ago, I made a video that I presumed was a bug, but in fact wound up simply highlighting my own glaring lack of knowledge of the intricacies of Dominions 5, because there are a lot of things that even to this day, after having played multiplayer games for over a year, I'm still learning new things, new mechanics about the game. And I'm not talking about like mechanics that are being added in patches and stuff like that. I'm talking about like mechanics since Dominions 4 kind of mechanics. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Another reason is because the nation that we'll be showcasing today, Nazca, is a nation that I'm playing in one of my accidental ascension videos. And so I wanted to just sort of preface it a little bit with how to actually play the nation, because obviously accidental ascension, you just sort of get a random pretender instead of one you would have built. And my pretender was sort of meh. So we're going to show you the kinds of things that you would want to do with a Nazca game, and then show you what happened in that game as Nazca, with me playing it later on. And then another reason is because talking over some thoughts about playing Nazca and learning how to play Nazca and talking with other people really brought to the forefront for me that a lot of people, a lot of other multiplayer players, including some very knowledgeable and experienced ones, do not actually play Nazca a whole lot, and so don't necessarily know how all of the mechanics work. So I figured now is as good a time as any to make a whole Let's Play of it. Or not a Let's Play. Let's Play will come later, but I mean a nation showcase. So let's get into that. First and foremost, actually, I'll show you we'll be using the debug mod and Worthy Heroes mod. Because if you're not using Worthy Heroes, then you probably should be. We're going to pick the arena map. Kudos to Das Tactic for making this. I use it in about half of my test games. The other half being on Silent Seas. Unfortunately, neither of them have cave provinces. We're going to pick Nazca, and then the other player will pick Solaria, and it'll just be a AI player. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, the overview screen. So here's the lore bits that you can read. It's always a gem to read the lore every so often of the nations and the units and stuff like that. I'll let you guys do that on your own time. And so the general national features, they're Burb Nation, flying, cold resistant, and because they prefer cold scales. And then we do commander mummification on death with basically everybody except for the humans and the scouts. These are also human commanders, which we'll get to later. Everybody that's not a human is flying. Free recruit slaves, and then also very cheap. You can just normally recruit them. There. Nope. Where are they? There. And then you can reanimate dead with priests, with undead priests specifically. So alive burbs will not be able to reanimate, but undead, anything that is undead and has priest levels can reanimate. That'll be important in a bit. Sun guards are bodyguards. That's great situationally. The general magic is fire, earth, air, death, and astral, but pretty low of each of these. Fire, you don't get above fire 2. Air, you don't get above air 2 or air 3 with a hero that you can get. And so you're not actually going to be able to make boosters except for the fire death cross path that gets you a fire boost, but even that won't get you to fire 4, which you'll need for the flame helmet, and then that'll get you into fire 5. So you're kind of actually locked down on those two. Earth, you can get pretty high. You start with potential for Earth 2 randoms, and Koyas are just straight up Earth 2 potential for Earth 3. You can make Earth boosts to get to Earth 4, and then that's probably going to be about your cap unless you get into artifacts or you take some more stuff on your pretender. And astral, I think the highest you can get is to astral 2, maybe some astral 3. So all pretty low, but with astral doesn't matter that much in terms of magic combat casts, because you can get into communions. Your priests are powerful, and they are. You have recruitable holy 3s, 2 recruitable holy 3s. One is slow to recruit and one is ridiculous expensive, but you can get them. And then undead priests can reanimate the dead. And building is primitive forts, which just means that you just have normal forts. You don't have palisades, so that's a blessing. Let's get into the units. This is the slave that we're talking about. Glaring fact about the slave is that you do not actually have taskmasters. None of your commanders are taskmasters. You've got inspirational leaders, but no taskmasters. So these guys are going to be permanently at crappy morale. They're going to fly away in ridiculous numbers and probably scatter to the winds and never come back. So expect them to die. Die they shall. You can recruit them in your forts, but you don't really need to. We'll go into why with the commanders later on. You've got human warriors. They are, I'm pretty sure, to a fault, all undisciplined, and so all bad. But they can also be recruited in highlands and mountains without a fort. So there's that. But you would never want to. I challenge anyone to find or make a Let's Play saying, as Nazca, use humans. I challenge you. Alright, moving on. So, outside of slaves, you can recruit semi-competent birds, but they're still bad because they're birds. So, birds in general, they're going to be size 3, so lower attack density, and they're still pretty fragile. Nazcan units are descendant of the raptor clans, so you can actually they're actually a little bit tougher than Kalian normal units outside of their raptor clan guys. So they're a little bit okay, but they're still bad. But they're very cheap, so you can still get a lot of them. And you've got 3 varieties. You've got the lance variety, or I'm sorry, 4 varieties. You've got the mace variety, you've got the axe variety, and you've got the bow variety. And they're decent bows. They're 10 gold bows, so you can spam these guys pretty easily, and they're flying, so not terrible. But actually terrible. They're pretty bad units. You're not going to be able to spam enough of these guys to go toe-to-toe in a stand-up fight with basically anyone, especially in the mid-age. Like when you're going up against Scalaria, Airmore, Ashdod, heck, even Asphodel will have more guys and better guys than you. So you're not going to be able to use your troops for staying power. But nobody does, so no worries there. You got 2 recruitable sacreds, recruitable only in your capital. You've got the lance variety, which also has storm immunity. Actually, I think, oh, no, never mind. I was going to say everybody has storm immunity, but they do not, including these guys who do not. And you've got the sun mace variety, not the mace variety, the sun mace variety. Why is that important? Because sun mace does 3 times damage versus demons and undead, and you can just recruit these guys with them. So that is fantastic. Bodyguard is also a bonus, which can be useful if you come up against assassinations a lot. These guys can save your bacon. So they're actually pretty evenly priced. 20 gold, 23 gold, and these guys are a little bit more expensive for resources. Stat-wise, they're also pretty similar. These guys have a lance, so they do bonus damage with the charge, but their stats are slightly weaker. They've got 14 defense and 12 attack versus 13 attack and 14 defense. And these guys have better protection as well. So in general, I would probably recruit these guys, though I can see the appeal for the lance charge from these guys. Overall, later game, you're definitely going to want these guys because of all the extra bonuses that they get from the Sun Mace and the Bodyguard. So if you can, probably just be recruiting these guys. Now, commanders, you've got Flying Scouts. Flying Scouts are fantastic. They always are. And they're not halfway bad priced too, but yeah. So anyways, Flying Scouts. You have Human Commanders. This is who you start with, leading your crappy starting army. Never get these guys ever again for any reason. Again, can be recruited in highlands and mountains. Maybe to like build a palisade or something like that, but otherwise no. Especially not in a fort. When you can get these guys instead. You've got two varieties of commanders, one at the 60 leadership mark and one at the 80 leadership mark. 80 leadership gives you +1 morale for squads, so that's great. And then this is where you start getting mummification. Scouts do not get mummification, not important enough, but Apus and Apuscapes. We're gonna stop pronouncing things now. They get mummification, and these two, as you see sort of how they're paired in here, these two mummify into one of these guys. And all mummies are rather expensive. This is going to be their gold upkeep for the year. And that is the cheapest, so they're pretty expensive. They have no priest levels, but they are sacred and they're inspirational, and they will have, if I recall correctly, but we'll be able to test this shortly, they will have the leadership of the guy that they died. We're not going to quote me on that in case I'm wrong, but yeah, so the Apus are 40 gold and the others are 70 gold for the 80 leadership. If you really, really, really want your Haturuna to not rout on turn 1. Then you get the Aklas. Aklas are pretty good research monkeys, except for flying, but they've got Fire 1, Air 1. They're so-so. Once you get Storm out, they can become Air 2 and use Lightning and be actually useful in battles once you're not researching anymore. And they're Priest 1s, so they're the first ones that once they become mummified will be able to reanimate undead. As soon as you get these priest levels, you get reanimation bonus. You can reanimate soulless if there are corpses, ghouls if you want to kill your population and hold up fort walls better, and long dead if you just want standing armies. And they're innate spellcasters as well, so that means all their spells are going to be 100% casting speed, which at this low level, you're not really going to be casting anything that's outside of 100% casting speed. Additionally, as you saw with the previous one, they have a crap ton of miscellaneous slots and a head slot, and that's about it. Whereas the bird versions have full slots. So moving on, these are your go-to battle mages. You're going to be recruiting as many of these as you can. And they are good for basically everything. They start with Death 2, which means that they start being able to do Horde of Skeletons. They're Holy 2s, which means that they can bless sacred squads and also banish if you are getting into battles with other undead. And they get randoms of Earth, Air, and Astral. All of these are useful. Astral means they can get into communions as either slaves or masters, both of which are useful for them. Earth makes them Earth 2, which means they can Earth power and get up to Earth 3 and then cast all sorts of stuff. And air means that they have the death-air cross path, which means that they can gear up and make lots and lots of corpse constructs, which is great. They get killed into these mummies, same deal. And with Holy 2, they reanimate slightly more undead. Now, in addition to being able to recruit these guys and have them die into mummies, you can just straight up recruit the mummies for this gold cost, if you have the gold. The only mummy bundles that you would probably want to actually recruit, though, are these ones. Though you can recruit these in basically all forts, because the Royal Malquis are only available in the capital, but you can recruit these other mummy bundles in just any fort as well. Alright, and now your triple block of capital-only recruitments, starting with the Inca. Inca are great, recruitable, Holy 3s, slow to recruit, so that's a pain in the butt. And they start out with Air 2 and Fire 2 with a chance, a very, very rare chance for Fire, Air, and Astral. I would not count on getting these ever. If you do, you get that fire random, then you can forge a the Skull of Fire, and then you've got Fire 4. But I would assume that this is never going to happen in a game that goes up to 70 turns. Why do I say that? Because, well, you know, that's sort of where I'm at in my own Nazca game. Holy 3 is great. Divine Blessing. They also come equipped with Awe. And Air 2 means that they can later on in the game Cloud Trapeze. Fire 2 does mean in terms of combat casting they can do Phoenix Power and Phoenix Pyre, and so they can actually be very, very decent thugs on their own if you give them some halfway decent gear. And they can also be either Air Elemental or Fire Elemental summoners depending on your need, and that is fantastic. It's a little bit of a struggle to get them up to where you need to cast Storm with these guys because they're only Air 2. So you're probably going to be doing that with your Royal Malquis after they get into Communions, or potentially with one of your national heroes that gets Air 3. And when they die, they become mummified, and there's a interaction between these two cap-only recruitable units that is different from just the regular mages that die into mummy bundles, and we'll get into how that works later on. The other cap-only recruit burb is Koya. Also slow to recruit and only Holy 2. But you got a lot more magic with that, and you actually have a 30% chance to get even more. So this is actually potentially pretty great. But again, I wouldn't necessarily count on it. Now, these guys are great for Gifts of Heaven, which, by the way, also these guys are. If you get the Astral one, Gifts of Heaven guys. They can also do Earthquake, and they can also do Horde of Skeletons, and they can do, also do, whatchamacallit. Well, if they get the air random, they can do Winds of Death and Wailing Winds and stuff like that. These guys could do Wailing Winds a lot more reliably if you give them boosters and stuff like that. So yeah, these guys are fun as well, especially for crowd clearing for large undead stacks. A little bit more useful than these guys at that, unless you're just spamming fire elementals. And then these guys are the not slow to recruit, straight up royal bundles. 850 gold. I think that they are either right up there with how much a Lastrygonian Tyrant in the late age costs, or potentially even more expensive. But they have 2 head slots and 4 miscellaneous slots, and you can actually put these to good use. Throw 4 copper arms on there, and they have actually 2 full arm slots. So, or I'm sorry, 4 full arm slots. So that's fantastic. If you recruit them, you also do get a small chance for these randoms as well. And they are straight up Holy 3s, and they are innate spellcaster 2. there are very, very few things that are innate spellcaster 2, and there is only one unit in the game that is innate spellcaster 3, and you are going to see them in this video. The last two units, commanders that you may or may not have a use for, are human commanders that are recruitable in Highland and Mountains, and sometimes your cap actually might start in a Highland or Mountain province, and so you can actually recruit these out of your capital. Now the reason why you might not necessarily want to do that is because they're heretics, both of them, so that's something to keep in mind if you want to spam these guys out. But they do have nature, and they have nature air crosspath, which is meh, and they have nature earth crosspath, which is much more better. They also are disease healers, and these guys are bringers of fortune, and these guys are fortune tellers, so you can have uses for them. It's a very low breaking into nature, and you're going to either have to empower or have nature in some other way if you're going to get thistle maces and move on up in the world, but it can be done. Also, fun fact, if you make a heretic unit a prophet, it is Holy 3 with the heretic levels that it also has. How that works, I don't know, but it is something that I have tried out, and I wouldn't recommend it. Alright, so some just basic pretender suggestions. You really want air with your pretender, so some of the best ones that you can get for air are these guys, who starts with air 3, this guy who is a very cheap chassis, and air 2 on him. No air there, 1 air on him, and so those are all good. Of course, the rainbow pretenders are also good if you just want to break into air, but none of them start with air, so that's something to consider. For me, my go-to is probably the Waka Stone Waka, and the reason is because I like air, but I also like the earth, and I would do at least earth 4, potentially earth 5, depending on what you find your needs are. Thunder weapons is basically like the bread and butter of Nazca. The reason is because if you go into spells by pressing S here, Conjuration 3, of course I have the debug mod on, so it just has them all unlocked. Conjuration 3 is going to get you condors, and condors, first of all, scales with the amount of air that you have, but also have 2 attacks and are sacred. And so put very good use to the Thunder Weapons Bless. If you're not, if you're playing against a Nazca player, expect them to have Thunder Weapons. Fire Shock Resist, you could either take it or leave it, because it really does depend on who you expect to be facing. But it pairs off very, very well with your Sapayas, because once you have Fire Shock Resist, you've got all the elements and poison covered, and there is very little that will be able to punch through that in terms of elemental damage except for acid. So it's a very good hold the line bless for your Sapayas if you're planning on going that route. If you're not, and you don't see a whole lot of fire or lightning players in the game, I'd either go with Strength of the Earth, in which case you'd probably want like 6 to do double Strength of the Earth, or 5 and Reinvigoration. Reinvigoration just in general is another good one for Earth 4, because, oh, not Reconstruction, double Reinvigoration, because then it'll hit your mages as well. It's not going to be really relevant to your Sapayas, but it'll be good for your mages and the rest of your sacreds, but your sacreds shouldn't be really putting Reinvigoration to much use anyways, because they shouldn't be lasting that long in a battle. But I would at least take Earth 4, and the reason is because one of the other boosters that you don't have access to with your national units is Staff of Elemental Masteries, and having Earth 4 with as much air as you want will get you there. So then you can actually break into things like Fire 4 and Air 4 and things like that. So I would just recommend that. at least Earth 4. And then I'd probably also take Blood to get Blood Surge. Blood Surge is just a general all-purpose very good spell. Or you could even go higher and get double strength, and then have like ridiculous strength here. That could be fun, but you'd have to dump some scales then. The reason I'd actually take a pretty cheap bless is because then you don't have to dump your scales. Let's just do double reinvigoration, and then you've broken even. Actually, you can go up to 5 and you have even scales. Your units are pretty cheap, so you could theoretically dump productivity, but the problem is everybody's go-to with growth that used to be the go-to is now the least valuable in terms of straight up gold income. This is I believe 2% gold income per scale. Yep. So whereas production and order are both plus 3%. So even dropping this by 1 is your income is getting hit, and the only thing you really need as Nazca is income. Now you can dump it if you plan on just expanding like crazy and having a ridiculous health scales bless, but you don't really need it. You can do fine with this and be awake and have a good bless and just have normal skills. Maybe you could do like turmoil and luck, whatever. But yeah, and dropping the temperature scales is also just one of the hardest hitting ones. But yeah, just food for thought. You could probably go with that. We're actually going to take Astral, 1 point of Astral here, because we need it for the, whatchamacallit, debug senseis. Alright, so here we go. And let's start. Okay, let's just go a couple turns. Debug sensei. Pool those gems. And get some more. And we'll do one more round of these. All right, and now we'll just have this guy on permanent gems wish, this guy on permanent gold wish, for good measure, this guy on permanent blood slaves wish, and the rest will hold off for now, except we want to get the heroes so that I can showcase them as well. So the heroes that you get are the first couple. You get the wingless Koya. You get, hang on, Inca Kappa, spelled Kappa, there we go, and apostate seraph, there we go, and we'll just have you casting condors. So we can, oh, right, okay. We'll do another wish cast gems. And let's get started on some recruitment of these guys so that we can do some showcasing of that as well. Bump the province PD in case Celeria decides to make any moves. There we go. Now these four will need to Gift of Reason or Divine Name these guys. Let's do Divine Name. First couple. Seraph, Inca, and Koya. And we'll get some more gems. Oops. Alright. So let's start off with opening moves. For your opening moves, you're going to have this starting army, which is just terrible. They're undisciplined, so you can't even tell them to throw their javelins. They'll just decide to or not. And you've got this crap guy who you would rather just have him suicide himself. Actually, suiciding themselves is generally a common theme in Nazca games. Let's cancel that for the time being. You probably want to recruit two of these guys. Let's say, well, for me, I would recruit these guys. You're probably only going to be able to get up to 4 or 5 in your first turn, and probably realistically about 5 or 6 over the course of the game. So I wouldn't probably go past 5 or 6 Dominion unless you've really got the points to spare. And again, the Apu are the cheaper ones, and the upgraded Apus are the more expensive ones for leadership if you really want that. But I would probably go with the cheaper ones, and the reason is because all of these mummies, as you see in the flavor text somewhere, can, as part of being mummies, capture slaves. Sort of akin to how Mictlan, and I'm not actually familiar with other slave capturing nations, but similar to how just capturing slaves works for everybody else. And except for their slaves are the Hatun Runa, the flying slaves that you get right here. Same stats, same exact thing, same cost per year, 2 gold per year, very cheap. But freer than 5 gold, freer than 3 resources and 2 recruitment points, just straight up free. So all of your mummy bundles can do that, even the ones that don't have any priest levels, as we will demonstrate. Which one's the scout? This one's the scout. You go away. So what you can see other people doing in Nazca games is just recruiting a bunch of these guys and then suiciding them. It'll cost you in terms of upkeep for the mummy bundles, but it won't cost you in the slave units that you're getting, and that'll actually really boost your speed in terms of getting armies out there to expand with. You could probably do this for a good 3-4 turns before even going to mages in order to get a straight up good expansion force and reliable amount of units, and then probably at least 1 fort churning out these guys every turn, as you see if you've watched Haroon's videos on playing Nazca, can be quite an effective strategy. But before we do that, I'm going to demonstrate what I meant when I said any undead unit with priest levels can reanimate undead by making this guy a prophet. This guy will continue to suicide himself, and we'll make 2 more, and then we'll switch to the Inca because I need to demonstrate some stuff with him as well. And he will predictably kill himself. Hey, he took a lion tribe with him. Good for him. And there he is. He even made himself a hero. Now all you need to do with these guys, capture slaves. Yeah, we're not going to recruit anymore, so we can see how quick the buildup is here of this. We'll give you that. And yeah, then you just keep doing this. Sending these guys. Now this guy, now that he's a prophet, you will also go kill himself. Make sure you die. Don't like actually win by accident. And we'll cut that out and get a Koya now. Deaded and deaded. There we go. So now, as you can see, this is our prophet, and because he is undead and he got priest levels, he can now reanimate. And because he can now reanimate and he is a Holy 3 priest, he can call Supaya straight up. So what this means is, while you can get out Condors really, really early, because it's only Conjuration 3, and if you start with an Awake Pretender who's researching, you can do that pretty effectively. You can get Supayas way sooner than that. All you need is an Apu turn 1 recruitment, Prophet turn 2, Suicide turn 3, turn 4, there you go, Supayas. With your bless. So it can be done, and that is how it is done. These guys continue to capture slaves. We got about 5, I think it's a D6 number of slaves per turn. So let's do another turn, and there you go. That's like an actual semi-decent expansion force that could probably take on these guys, maybe even those guys. And if you keep recruiting these guys, then they can actually lead it. They can lead up to 60. So that's one way of getting your expansion kick-started pretty decently. And again, that's going to cut into mage recruitment turns, but it can be done. So let's go a couple turns and get Koya. And as you can see, there are Supayas. We're already churning them out pretty readily. And the next thing I'm going to showcase that is a source of much confusion for me and much confusion for other people as well, until I worked through it and figured out how it goes, is the interaction between Koya and Inca. Alright, so we had some technical difficulties with showcasing the whole Koya-Inca interaction. So we're going to go ahead and do that now, redo that now. It's going to look a little out of order, but no saves in this game. Alright, so here we go, Twiceborn and Twiceborn. So when you cast Twiceborn on a Koya, the way people think of it, I think, is that generally speaking, they assume that it is some sort of shield against mummification. It's not exactly how it's going to work, as we will see. We're also going to make some gear. Earth Boot, Bloodstone. Bloodstone, by the way, is another reason why you want to get blood on your Pretender with that earth, because they're just made for Nazca. Just all of those earthquakes that you can be dropping, and you can put these on your Inca bundles as well. So just fantastic. And then let's get what else? Girdles of Might. Here we go. Okay, so we've got a Koya here and an Inca here. We're going to send this one off to go Suicide in here. And as you can see, it says it has lived as a white mage, and the text says that nobody else was killed. So the Inca's still alive, the only Inca we've got here, and it does now take away the mummification thing. So this is one way to make your Koya stick around without having to mummify them. They are going to only be priest level 2, so just reanimating regular long deads instead of Supayas. And they no longer fly, obviously. But one key thing about your general undead and the difference between them and mummies is that mummies cannot actually go underwater. They're not amphibious. The Royal Malkies do not have amphibious, so that is something to keep in mind if you're fighting someone like Scaleria. White mages will be able to go underwater, but mummy bundles will not. Now, let's go ahead and do part 2 of our test. Yeah, we'll just throw on that Bloodstone as well. And now we're going to Suicide the Inca. Get another Inca as well, just to showcase. And we're going to have our Koya sitting around here with all their gear on them. Battle in Nazca. Oh, they're trying to attack me. We're going to have to deal with that. And so as you can see here, it says, he died and lives as a royal Malki, and the Koya was sacrificed. So now we lost the Koya. We've only got, well, from later on, we've got this one here. No regular Koyas, and here is our new royal Malki. And as you can see, Air 3, because the Koya that was sacrificed was Air 1 random, so their paths do get added. Not their holy paths, unfortunately, but their regular magic paths. So you can have some fun interactions that way, but I wouldn't rely on it too heavily. Let's go one more turn. Oh, he's got like everything. Okay. Let's just overcast Wrath of God real quick. This is not going to show up in a couple of seconds because this video is going to be super out of order. There we go. Oh, he's got strands of power too. I want that. Okay, whatever. Okay, and so lastly, oh hey, we got an air random Inca. If you just have an Inca and no Koya, Koya will just turn into a royal Malki with Holy 2. So super expensive, but not Supaya capable. Whereas Inca, because they are Holy 3, will make these guys Holy 3 royal Malkis, which can then reanimate. Not super great magic paths, but it can be done. Okay, and so, ow. Oh, he won. Well, I had another royal Malki from before. But anyways, one of the other little small bonuses that you get is if you have a Koya with gear die in a province that had a laboratory, you get the items back. I didn't show this to prove that that's the case, but it happens, trust me. So that's at least a small consolation prize for having 2 slow to recruit mages combine into 1 not slow to recruit mage, even though it's very expensive. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how the interaction between Inca and Koya works. Very important to know, keep it in mind. Again, because Koya are only Holy 2, they're not going to be able to reanimate Supaya. Holy 3 is the cutoff. Now, let's get into your national heroes. Again, this is with the Worthy Heroes mod. You'll probably wind up playing Worthy Heroes in more games than not. So just something to keep in mind. Heroes that you get can change your gameplay and can affect how your game goes in very, very significant ways. So for starters, I mean, I shouldn't say for starters because you get them randomly. You never know which one you're going to get. We're going to do the Inca. The Inca is an Inca with Holy 3 and Air 2 and Fire 2, but he also has Earth 3. His awe is, I believe, better than your standard awe. Yep, 3 times as good. So he is an awesome thug. Plus, he has retinue of earth elementals, 6 earth elementals, 1 full-size one, and then the rest are sort of like chaff earth elementals, just all the time in battle. That is really cool, and also helps defend him against assassinations. One key note about mummification is, as it says, will not happen if the mummy dies on another plane, rare, or during an assassination, which is pretty key for going up against nations like Satis or Airmore or stuff like that. Not Airmore, Pythium. And anybody else who has assassins. That can wreck your face. These guys are very expensive. But anyways, he also has Earth 3. Earth 3 is really cool because in conjunction with mummification, if you ever wanted to do something like this, as you can see, our slaves is going up to ridiculous proportions. Thank goodness we have a lot of supplies. We now have a Koya right here, and if he dies, attack, which hopefully he dies and doesn't actually win. Yes, he died. Okay, let's take a look at that so we can see the Earth Elementals in action. There we go. Hello, little mini Earth Elementals. Stomp, stomp, stomp. And he did it. Okay. When he dies, he then gets a Koya sacrificed with him as well. And that turns them into Earth 5, which is pretty amazing. That is pretty cool to have an Earth 5 Royal-Malki. And it's still pretty expensive, so that's unfortunate, but you know, pretty neat. So that's stuff to consider when getting the Inca. Little strategies around there. The other another one of the heroes that is also a Royal-Malki that you get is here, the first couple. Very expensive, but they are Death 4, 3 head slots, 5 miscellaneous slots, Holy 4, which means that right off the bat they can call 3 Supayas. And also, as I was saying, Innate Spellcaster 3. This is the only Innate Spellcaster 3 in the game. You will not find this anywhere else, ever. So that's pretty cool. So this guy is pretty cool if you get him as well. Right here we've got your Air 3 mage. Like I said, you're not going to get a whole lot of access to high air unless you can get, for example, Staffs of Elemental Mastery out. So Air 3 gets you into storms. He is also a potential communion leader, so that is also great. And just in general, pretty cool to have around. No upkeep, that's nice. And has full access of slots, so this one's a pretty good hero to have around as well. And then the last hero that you get is also very, very helpful for Nazca. Nature 3 and Earth 3. Nature 3 will finally break you into getting to have Thistle Maces and going up high in nature. Earth 3 is also one of the ways to access higher earth that you can get, and then also is a Fortune Teller 15 and healer, not disease healer, healer, just straight up healer. So very useful to have wandering around. And because it's a Koya, it's not a heretic with these nature earth cross paths like I was showing with the human mages, and actually has 1 level of priest as well. So all of your Nazcan heroes are very useful in different ways to get out, which is why having Misfortune as Nazca is just sad, because it locks you out of all of this wondrousness. And we're back in the Prime timeline. Okay, so this video has gone on for quite a while. Probably going to be one of the longest videos I have ever done in a single sitting. So yeah, I hope I've showcased basically everything that you guys want to see. I think that covers about it. The Long Dead that you get are also National Long Dead, which include these winged Nazcan Long Dead, which thankfully are still size 2. Additionally, you actually get Fort Province defense of Soulless, so that's pretty cool. Soulless Nazcans are size 3, unfortunately. Oh, and also Long Dead. So that's a bummer. But you can get them. I don't think you have any national types of ghouls. I think you just get regular ghouls. Monkey Nations get national ghouls, which are slightly better, but not Nazca. So ghouls is just for holding up walls if you want them to do it better than long dead. One more thing real quick that I'm going to interject is the all-important national item, the huaca headdress. This has a number of useful effects. First off, if you make some, which we are going to make, these can go on your supayas, or sorry, your roamalkis, and make more supayas. Goes up to 4. Now the little number here is actually incorrect. It shows 1 more than you actually get, so you will actually get 3. But another thing that you can do once you get the research for it is cast the spell Supaya, which gets you 5 plus 2 if you're wearing a headdress. Or the same also goes if you want to burn your astral pearls for huacas, which let's just get some right now, show them off. It's so tiny. You also get these guys, and as you can see, casting huacas normally gets you 5, but you get 2 more if you're wearing a headdress. Huacas have awe and can take your bless, and their magic lance is pretty good. It's a charge bonus lance for first strike, different from regular supaya lances, because supayas, oh god, as we see, have spectral spears which make magic resistance checks for half damage. So that's a bummer, something that huacas do not have to deal with. They also have straight up resistances for basically everything except for poison, and they're magic beings. So, and they fly through storms. Just generally great things. I think that's it. Yeah, so hopefully that helps demystify a couple of things about Nazca. If you want to see a Nazca game played very, very well, I highly recommend going and checking out Perun's videos on the subject. He should be wrapping up that series of his shortly. Fun fact, I actually wound up starting my own Nazcan game in Accidental Ascension around the same time that he started uploading his videos. So a lot of my early moves were sort of playing off of me watching some of his videos and learning some helpful tidbits from that. So shout out to Perun, thanks for that. And if you want to see Nazca played not so well with a hilarious and ridiculous Pretender chassis, then stay tuned, because Accidental Ascension 4A should be coming up from the Nazcan perspective very soon. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.